Hey everyone, it's Mark. This is my recap for Pokémon Horizons episode 14, Fly, Wattrel. This was the 1246th episode of the Pokémon anime and another solid episode with a lot to discuss, so let's get straight into it. We skip the usual recap from Liko at the beginning of this episode, instead diving straight into Dot's efforts to fix the airship's tech issues. Freed, Liko, and Murdoch are all outside her room talking to her, and Liko is trying to get her friend to keep calm, but yeah, it's not exactly working. Murdoch abruptly changes the subject by asking Liko to go shopping, although it was pretty obvious that Murdoch is up to something here, dragging Liko away so suddenly. Outside the ship, Freed is alerted by Noctowl that there is a group of Magneton nearby, and he immediately suspects that they are behind the tech issues. After getting them to disperse with a flamethrower from Charizard, the Bravasagi systems are instantly back up and running. One of the Magneton lingers around for a second, and this is too tempting for Freed to resist, so he starts following it. Let's check in with Roy for the first time in this episode, and he's looking for that Wattrel again. He finds it on his own away from the rest of the Wattrel flock, who decide to fly up towards this tower together. This particular Wattrel stays behind though, fixated on the other birds flying. Fuecoco, on the other hand, always easily distracted, runs off towards a nice-smelling tree, which just angers the Vespiquen living nearby, and oh yeah, now they're in trouble. The Vespiquen chases everyone around, but the Wattrel is super hesitant to jump off this piece of land that they're running on. However, Roy and Fuecoco end up running straight off the side because, well, of course they did. The Vespiquen flies away, leaving Roy and Fuecoco alone with Wattrel. In case you were wondering, this Wattrel is easily identifiable by its eyes. This one doesn't have the same dopey expression that other Wattrel do. It also doesn't have the ability to fly like the other Wattrel do, and Roy has picked up on this. He starts to go full Ash Ketchum here by trying to teach Wattrel how to fly. Roy invites Wattrel to jump into the stream with him, but yeah, this little birdie would rather do pretty much anything else in the entire world than that. We'll pick that back up later, but for now, let's change our focus to Liko and Murdoch's shopping spree. Actually, Murdoch just brought Liko out here to say thank you to her, specifically about inviting Dot to the picnic and being her friend. Liko is glad to help and is actually thankful for Dot for giving her courage. I wasn't really buying this one, but whatever, I'll just go with whatever Liko is saying. Murdoch notices that Liko is worried about the Bravasagi though, and he just reiterates that they'll always work together to overcome whatever obstacle is in their way. With all of that said, they've managed to walk all the way to Levincia, so they decide to stop for ice cream while they're there. Meanwhile, Freed and Charizard are tailing that lone Magneton, no sign of Captain Pikachu anywhere, so it's just Freed and Charizard. He knows this is suspicious and that this isn't just some random wild Magneton, but he keeps following it regardless. I'm sure nothing could go wrong with that, so let's get back to Liko and Murdoch, who bought a ton of spices. He mentioned the secret spicy spice that he would have liked, and oh, guess what? Spinel's Behem was spying on them from the bushes. Let's see how Roy's flying school is going, and actually Liko and Murdoch show up just as Roy is teaching Wattrel how to jump off a ledge. This little guy is still terrified though, so their progress is going pretty slow. Roy explains to the others that he wants to help Wattrel be able to fly around with its friends, and after some encouragement from everyone watching, Wattrel takes a mighty leap from the ledge and lands down below, even if this was a completely terrifying experience. I do really like this Wattrel though. I mean, it's acting as excited as a little kid hearing everyone's approval, and oh come on, how could you not love this thing too? Anyways, we'll get back to this later, but for now, let's shift our attention to Freed and Charizard, who have tracked Magneton all the way to Levincia. Magneton leads them down into a dark alley, and come on, Freed, don't be an idiot. Don't go into the dark alley. Oh my god, the idiot actually went into the dark alley, and now he's surrounded. Not to break the suspense too much, but instead of hopping off Charizard, he really could have just flown upwards. Nothing was blocking their escape route to the skies. We see that Behem has this little chip on its side. That's how Spinel is communicating with his Pokemon from afar, and their strategy is to use Behem's psychic energy to keep Charizard locked in place, while Magneton just blasts it with super effective attacks over and over again. It's hinted at that Spinel is just in one of the houses nearby, but we never got any confirmation about that. Instead, this guy is just disappointed that Freed couldn't put up more of a fight and calls for a meteor beam to put an end to all of this. Freed isn't done fighting just yet though, and tells Charizard to surpass its potential, and oh boy, here we go. Freed terastalizes his Charizard into a dark type, which I did not expect. He calls for a Tera Blast, and yeah, this thing looked powerful. One shot was all it took for Charizard to win this battle, and now Spinel is just amused by what he's seen. His Pokemon teleport away before Freed can push the confrontation any further, and Spinel is fine with how things went, I guess. With no other leads, Freed just starts to fly back to the airship, but he sees Roy and the others along his way. Even though Wattrel is making progress, it still wants nothing to do with jumping off and forcing itself to fly. They all head back to the Bravasagi for the day and debrief on everything that's happened. Well, not quite everything, because Freed plays coy about what he was getting up to today. Instead, he just asks about the status of the ship, and Dot says that it'll be until tomorrow before they can set off. off. In case you were wondering where Roy was during this discussion, he's actually outside, still thinking about how he can help that Wattrel. Just then, Ludlow walks by with his fishing rod, and yeah, Roy's got an idea. The next day, Roy creates this contraption that's going to help simulate flying for Wattrel. Liko comes and joins him, and I thought it was pretty funny that Ludlow was just like, no big deal, there's more to fishing than just fishing, as if having a fishing rod was going to make any difference when he was fishing off the end of an airship that's on land. Okay, moving on. Roy introduces Wattrel to this new invention, and Wattrel agrees to give it a try. It is still terrified about being suspended over the water, but Roy reiterates that this is going to help Wattrel be able to fly around with its friends one day. Liko is encouraging them when she gets interrupted by a notification on her phone. I guess this was some kind of targeted ad by a shop, and oh, guess what? It's selling that secret spicy spice that Murdoch wanted, and supplies are limited. Yeah, sounds like a total scam to me, but we know Liko is pretty naive and gullible, so she runs off on her own. Surprise, surprise. Roy continues his training with Wattrel, and it's trying so hard to fly that it actually sparks the electricity in its wings, and yeah, the spark just snaps the string that was holding Wattrel in place. Uh-oh. Luckily, Wattrel flaps its wings so furiously that it manages to stay above the water, and it eventually is able to spread its wings enough to glide in the air. Cue a big gust of wind out of nowhere, and this sends Wattrel so high up into the sky that it actually flies up to the top of the tower with the rest of its flock. It's celebration time, and even Murdoch comes on over, claiming to have seen the whole thing. He tells Roy that it's time to leave on the ship though, so Roy says his goodbye to Wattrel and starts walking away. The little bird is surprised to see its new friend going away, and after a moment of panic, Wattrel makes up its mind. Instead of staying with its flock, Wattrel wants to join Roy, and bravely jumps off the top of the tower before quickly realizing that, okay, maybe it can't actually fly just yet. Murdoch realizes that Roy isn't feeling like himself, and Roy admits that he's not as happy as he thought he would be. Suddenly, they realize that Wattrel is trying to catch up with them, and boy is it trying, and Murdoch jumps in to hand Roy a Pokeball. Things get even more dramatic as another gust of wind flares up. Now Wattrel is headed straight towards that stream it's been trying so hard to avoid. Roy jumps into action. The scene was pretty fantastic, which is why I tried to include as much of it as possible at the start of this video, but this random Fuecoco part kind of made it impossible for me to show the whole thing. Anyways, the tension and excitement is at an all-time high as Roy's Pokeball curves towards Wattrel. There's no room for error, and it just barely makes contact with the bottom of Wattrel's feet, but that's enough for the capture to activate. Roy, running at full speed with joy in his eyes, jumps to try and save Wattrel, and just manages to catch the Pokeball before it falls, and 3 shakes later, Roy has caught Wattrel. Wow, what a moment. Before they can even react, Wattrel comes back up from its Pokeball and excitedly jumps into its trainer's arms. Yeah, I thought this entire scene was amazing. Probably my favorite moments of Horizons so far. With all of that settled, let's get back to the airship and set off. Oh wait, Liko is still off on her own. I mean, what could possibly go wrong here? Her directions lead her to, oh no, not a dark alley. Please do not go down this dark alley like an idiot. Liko, oh no, she's walking into the dark alley like an idiot. Didn't her parents teach this kid anything? Oh gosh, and now she runs into a strange man who's cornered her in the dark alley. Are we sure this is still a kid's show? Oh great, the weirdo who followed this little girl into the dark alley is actually Spinel, and Liko says she's just fine, but when she goes to pick up her phone, Spinel's BHM locks eyes with her, and with some really creepy music playing, this thing starts using these flashing lights and psychic powers to hypnotize her. Hypnotize may not be the right word, but you get the idea. Something malicious is happening right now. Even Sprigatito and the Rotom phone are affected, but when Liko comes to, her pendant is missing. Spinel leaves them there and walks away, and yep, you guessed it, this member of the Explorers actually succeeded in taking Liko's pendant, and that's how this episode comes to an end. Like I said at the start of this video, I thought this was another solid episode with a lot to discuss. Long gone are the days of Pokemon Journeys when tons of people would complain about the episodes feeling, well, episodic or just completely disconnected from one another, and Horizons has been totally different to say the least. Now, we are still only 14 episodes in, but so far, every episode is built on what came before it, as well as setting up future events. I mean, how many of these episodes are going to end with some dramatic cliffhanger? And even though this isn't a comment about this episode specifically, I did just want to mention how Horizons is doing a really good job of telling this story overall so far. Let's dig into the major events of this episode, starting with Roy catching Wattrel. If I hadn't made it obvious enough already, I love this entire plotline. Roy was incredibly selfless throughout this entire process. At no point did he express any interest in actually catching Wattrel. He kept reiterating that he wanted to help Wattrel so that it would be able to fly with the rest of its flock. This was typified by the scene where Murdoch handed Roy a Pokeball, as after Roy said the same thing about Wattrel flying with its friends again, Murdoch rightly pointed out that Wattrel wants to be friends with Roy, and that just shows how quickly Roy is learning about Pokemon. He's able to strike up such a strong connection with a wild Pokemon, and he wasn't even trying to, really. I think Wattrel is a great first addition to the team. Sure, it's kind of basic to see a main character catch the regional bird Pokemon so early on in a new series, but I really like this Wattrel's personality, and I think these three just make such a great family already. The other major thing I wanted to talk about in this episode was Freed using terrestrialization, and in my notes I actually wrote this down as Freed's Terreluctance, because I thought it was interesting that Freed seems so reluctant to actually use his Tera Orb. Now, I could just be overanalyzing things here, and this could mean absolutely nothing, so forgive me if that is the case, but Freed was hesitant to pull out his Tera Orb, almost like he didn't want to use it if he didn't have to. I'm not sure if there's anything more to the situation than that, but seeing Tera Dark Charizard was pretty cool, even if the Dark Tera type seemed way too convenient given the situation they were in. A more easily identifiable issue with Freed's behavior in this episode was when he totally glossed over this entire experience with the rest of the Rising Voltaclers. I don't know what he was trying to accomplish by not telling them about getting attacked. I mean, I guess he didn't want the others to worry about him, but seriously, if he had just warned the others that he had gotten lured into a dark alley in Levincia before getting attacked, then maybe, just maybe, he could have prevented the same thing from happening to Liko the very next day. And yeah, for real, I know I made a meal out of this during my recap of the episode, but what the heck is going on with Liko being stupid enough to walk down a dark alley by herself in a big city based on nothing other than a sketchy advertisement she got on her phone? This is what happens when you take a kid out of school. They don't even learn basic stranger danger and how to detect phishing messages online. In the end, a whole lot worse could have happened to Liko, so her losing her pendant is actually not that bad of an outcome when you consider that this was a little girl getting lured into a dark alley by an adult man. I did not expect to be talking about this in connection to the Pokemon anime, so let's just move on. While I have a lot of reasons to praise this episode, I also don't want to go over the top with it. I really liked it, and in fact, I'm giving this episode a 7.5 out of 10 rating. In short, this episode was really good, but there may have been better episodes already in Horizons. There were some minor things that took away from my enjoyment, but on the whole, it was a pretty good episode, so let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Shifting gears to talk about the next episode, and it looks like Liko, Sprigatito, and her Rotom phone lost all their memories thanks to Spinel. I'm guessing she'll get her memories back, but we'll see just how easy it is for her to get the pendants back. I thought it was interesting seeing this Pokemon in the preview. At first I thought it was a Meteos Corviknight, but it actually looks more like a Corvisquire, so I have no clue what's actually going on. More importantly though, I hope we dedicate most of the screen time next week to the potential Nidothing and Iono collab. That's really the #1 thing I want to see. Let me know your predictions down in the comments, and be sure to leave a like on this video and subscribe if you haven't already. We're close to hitting 10,000 subscribers, but I need everyone's help to make it there. Just liking this video does a lot to help my channel grow. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.